Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. I hope that you are all well. And if you are new, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. As most of you already know, I like to read Canadian literature, and I follow a couple of the book prizes, including the Giller Prize, which is awarded for the best Canadian fiction. And I just finished the last book in the shortlist a couple days ago, and the announcement for the winner will be out on November the 7th. So I thought that I would take some time, kind of go through the books on the shortlist with you and try and predict the winner. I was also able to attend Between the Pages when the tour was here in Calgary. So 4 of the authors gathered. They did a reading and then also answered some questions from the host, who was Derek Beaulieu. So I will tell you a little bit about that as well. This is always hard. I can see how all 5 books would have an argument for being chosen. So in many ways, for me, this came down to enjoyability. And even as I was preparing this video, it was kind of going back and forth, but there is one that I continue to think about that I think is above the rest in many ways. So I am going to start with the book that I have ranked in the 5th spot, and that is Stray Dogs by Rawi Hage. This is a collection of 11 short stories, and at the Between the Pages event, Rawi read from the short story called The Fate of the Son of the Man on the Horse, which is a story about a man who is visited by Sophia Loren. And many of the stories take place in Lebanon and have characters who straddle 2 worlds. So the stories had themes of art, philosophy, relationships to people and place. And 2 of my favorite stories in the collection were the title story, Stray Dogs, about a photographer that goes to a conference in Tokyo and is asked to present a paper about 2 images of 2 different dogs. And this story had a very powerful ending. My other favorite story was the second story in the collection, which talked about the idea that the consumption of wheat was leading to weight gain and obesity in Lebanon. So, like this story, there are a few where the story at some point, takes on a much deeper meaning. And for me, I'm really glad that I read this collection. There's definitely some good writing, and it has made me want to read more of Rawi Hage's work. So I might try one of his novels. The book that I put in my number 4 spot is If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English by Noor. Noor was not at the event because she was actually in Cairo teaching. So that was unfortunate that, she couldn't be there and couldn't be part of it. But this is the second book that I've read by Noor, and I enjoyed this one more than the other one. There are some lines in this book that are breathtaking and just made me stop to think and ponder. The main character is an Egyptian American who moves to Cairo to connect back to her Egyptian roots. This is not an easy transition for her. She struggles to really fit in and is noticeably an outsider in many ways. And she meets a man who is from a poor town, who has also moved to Cairo, and he becomes almost obsessed with her. The relationship is very disturbing. He's also a drug addict, and what draws them together in the end is the same thing that pulls them apart, which I thought was very interesting. The book is divided into 3 parts. Each chapter begins with a question, which I also thought, that was kind of an interesting approach to the story. It's told in alternating perspectives, and the last part is completely different than the first 2 parts. And I think it's supposed to bring it all together, but it just didn't really work for me. I wasn't a fan of the structure of this book. However, I know people who really appreciated this, so I'm sure that I'm missing something along the way, and I'm interested in hearing from others and their perspectives on how this worked for them. Next in the middle spot, I'm kind of surprised actually, but I ranked The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayr at number 3. Suzette Mayr is from Calgary, and I'm not sure if she had a home court advantage at this event, but she definitely had a lot of fans there. And it's also kind of neat that the book, takes place on a train traveling across Canada. And it comes through Calgary, Canmore, and Banff. So places that, everyone at the event would be familiar with and would know well. So I thought that I was going to fall in love with this book, and I really enjoyed it. But it didn't captivate me the way I thought that it would. I thought that I was going to love Baxter, who is a black gay man who is working as a sleeping car porter in the late 20s. And although I liked him, again, I just didn't become enamored in the way that I thought I would. So we learn a lot through the interactions with the porters, especially Baxter, that they have with the passengers who, the passengers can be rude and obnoxious and very unreasonable. And we learn how easy it is for the porters to be seen as not doing their job, and how they are constantly on edge in order to protect themselves and their jobs. I loved that Baxter had dreams for himself and was doing what he could to make his dream of becoming a dentist. He's trying to make that dream come true. So in the end, this was good, but not exceptional for me. Suzette Mayr has other books out. In fact, another one that has been longlisted, or maybe even shortlisted, I don't remember, for the Giller. So I will definitely try, something else by her. I would not be upset if this won the Giller, as it has, I would say, probably the best historical relevance to Canada, and it tells the story of characters that we rarely hear about. That being said, I still have 2 more books to talk about, so let's go to those. So for this, I'm first going to talk about the books, and then I will rank them. So the last 2 books, one is a novel, the other is a short story collection. The novel is a debut called We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies by Tsering Yangzom Lama. At the event, she read the opening pages of this novel, and I have to say that Tsering has a beautiful voice and could actually read like audiobooks. I absolutely loved the writing of this story. I thought it was beautiful. This is about 2 sisters, Lama and Tenki, who have escaped Tibet during China's invasion. And they live in a refugee camp and eventually become separated. One of them comes to Canada and lives in Toronto. And like if an Egyptian cannot speak English, this is about displacement and identity and belonging. And what I think this book does so much better is it made me feel like I was there with the sisters. It did that in a way that the other book didn't for me. So I learned from both books, as I don't know much, really, if anything, about Egypt or Tibet, and I learned about their cultures. But I also think that We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies did a better job at really showing the Tibetan culture, especially through some of the mystical aspects in the story. And it also did a good job at showing appropriation and misunderstandings about Tibetan culture in the Western world. Also, like if an Egyptian cannot speak English, the structure of this book lost me, sometimes. So the other book is Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century by Kim Fu. And like Stray Dogs, this is a collection of short stories. So this one has 12 stories, and at the event, Kim Fu read from one of my favorite stories called 20 Hours. and I'm going to read the first paragraph of that story to you. After I killed my wife, I had 20 hours before her new body finished printing downstairs. I thought about how to spend the time. I could clean the house as a show of contrition, and when she returned to find me sitting at the shining kitchen island, knickknacks in place on dusted shelves, a pot of soup on the stove, we might not even need to discuss it. I could buy flowers. I could watch the printing, which still fascinated me, the weaving and webbing of each layer of tissue, the cross-sectional view of her internal workings like the ringed sections of a tree trunk. So I really liked this story, and I really liked the other story called Pre-Simulation Consultation. So like Stray Dogs, there were several stories that I really enjoyed and some that I didn't enjoy as much. One of the reasons that I think I liked this collection more was that I found it to have more of an impact. So the stories were surprising and unique, and they made me think. And during the Between the Pages event, one of the topics of conversation was about short stories versus novels. And the theme of home was also a hot topic, which is, a theme that I reflect on in my own life quite a bit, actually. So with the last two books, I had to decide between, beautiful writing, themes of displacement and Tibetan culture, and short fiction that had themes of grief and death and marriage, with writing that was surprising and affecting. So in the number 2 spot, I put We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies by Tsering, Yangzom, Lama. And my choice for the winner of the Giller Prize is Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century by Kim Fu. So I have to say that I am a little bit surprised at this. I really thought that I was going to choose Sleeping Car Porter or We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies. Those two were in top for quite some time. And I wouldn't be disappointed if either of them do win. But for me, I really enjoyed this short story collection. I rated several of the short stories 4 and 5 stars, and I didn't give any of the other books 5 stars. So in the end, the average rating for all of these stories was higher. There are also stories that, I keep thinking about. I definitely want to read more of Kim Fu's writing. So I have a few of her books on my shelf, so we will see. So November 7th is when I will find out which book is chosen this year as the Giller Prize winner. Please let me know if you have read any of the shortlisted books, if you are following the Giller, and which book you hope wins the prize this year. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.